And welcome back to 10 Count on UCN Live. I'm Steve Kim, joined by Mike Baca and Doug Fischer, editor of Ring Magazine. On the night of March 10th, there are dueling dates, a lot of boxing for you fans out there. Set your DVRs from the StubHub Center on ESPN. Oscar Valdez defends his WBO Featherweight title against Scott Quigg. And then from San Antonio, it's Showtime. Mikey Garcia goes for another world title, taking on IBF 140-pound champion Sergey Lipinets. All right, I'm going to start with you, Mike. Out of those two fights, which one gets priority? Which one's the one you're going to be watching live if you did not live in L.A.? Yeah, because I knew you were going to be ringside.
That's a good question. I would say if I wasn't going to be at StubHub on March 10th, I would probably be watching Mikey Garcia live.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it may surprise you a little bit, but the reason being is because Mikey Garcia's, we may not agree with it, him moving up in weight, moving down in weight. He's a lightweight titleist, but he's never defended it before. He's kind of just, he's off on his own way. It's very strange. He has no promoter, at least not yet. And I don't know, I think he's challenging himself a little bit too much with this Lipinets fight because I'm not sure, I think he's like just uber confident about himself and he thinks he's just gonna, take whatever title he wants and run his own show. And he has the talent to do it. I'm not saying he doesn't.
Well, I don't blame him for being at least confident going in against Lipinets. I mean, I saw what I saw when Lipinets won that vacant IBF title.
It's the Japanese.
Yeah, he wasn't exactly fighting Harada.
No. Exactly. Yeah, it wasn't fighting Harada exactly. No, and listen, I think the official scorecard was like 9 rounds to 3, but
not in reality.
He had to go blood and guts. I mean,
he was bloodied by the end of the night.
I actually thought maybe that fight took something out of him because it was so physically punishing. I don't know. I think it depends on how he trains, how he lives, and how extensive an amateur background he's had. He only has 13 pro fights, so maybe he's preserved in that regard. But I didn't see somebody on Mikey Garcia's level. I really didn't. So, and I also see somebody who is an aggressive fighter, which plays right into those heavy counterpunching hands of Garcia. So I don't know. You know my answer to that question, Steve.
Yeah.
It's Valdez Quigg because I see it as an even contest. I think Quigg can win that fight. And Quigg has a lot of experience and I love Oscar Valdez. He's a great personality.
Great TV fighter.
He's a great TV fighter. Yeah. He loves to train. He loves boxing, but he's vulnerable.
Yeah.
Looking at his last 2 title defenses, there was the guy from the Philippines,
Genesis Cervania.
Yes. Yeah, and then there was the guy from Colombia, Mariaga.
Who gave him hell.
Those guys were in the fight. Those guys put hands on him. Those guys extended him. Cervania dropped him and hurt him more than once. He's the kind of guy he's going to go life and death against guys who are really kind of like fringe contenders or prospects, which is, that's how I look at Cervania. He's like 24, 25 years old. So Scott Quigg is a guy who's a former belt holder. He's got a lot of experience, and he's been training here in the States, and I think his sparring has improved. Maybe he's learning some things from Freddie Roach and just being in that competitive wild card boxing club environment. And I know that Quigg's a tough guy. Quigg fought with a broken jaw for 8 rounds against Carl Franklin.
I go back.
This is a great fight.
Speaking of that night.
A great matchup, let's put it that way.
Speaking of that night, and that kind of goes into my decision of picking Mikey Garcia in that situation, we have seen Scott Quigg in the big stage, and he kind of just wet the bed.
That's true, but that was against Carl Frampton.
And you were there. But let me go back to that.
I was in Manchester.
I spoke to Quigg. I'm pretty close with Scott. I'm an admirer of his. And to me, this is an opportunity, much like George Groves faced a couple of weeks ago against Eubank. He can erase a lot of past ills, because that fight, I think, absolutely haunts him. And in that fight, and I've said this, and you were there, Joe Gallagher, I think, is a good trainer. But if he was a jockey that night, he gave a bad ride. You don't tell a guy after 6 rounds, we're winning the fight, while everyone else is saying it might be 5-1.
Right.
And then the guy comes on late. Here's the problem. If you go to the whip while your horse is down 100 yards, you're still going to lose the race.
I don't want to accuse Joe Gallagher of this, but I do think there was a bit of a mentality that we're the hometown fighter. we're the promoter fighter. It was an Eddie Hearn promotion, and Quigg was with Eddie Hearn, at least at that time, and Frampton had just had kind of a nasty split with Hearn.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe Gallagher's like,
played the political game.
I've got the house fighter. But the thing is, Belfast traveled with Carl Frampton. I thought it was going to be maybe 50-50, 60-40 in terms of the fans there. It was like 90-10%, 90-10 in favor of the fighter from Belfast. So that house was there for him. And the thing is that Frampton is a terrific boxer. And I think he was on. He was motivated for that night, and he was really at his boxing best. Valdez does not have that boxer's mentality. He can box. He's a two-time Olympian. He is a smart guy. He has skill. But he loads up with every shot, and he wants to entertain the crowd, and I love that about him. But when you load up with every shot, you present opportunities for your opponent, and you can burn out.
Yeah, if he's that fireballing pitcher, every pitch is a 98-mile-per-hour fastball. He's going to live or die off the heater. He's not throwing a changeup. He's not throwing a backdoor slider. His greatest strength is his greatest weakness. But the thing I like about Quigg Valdez, both of them have told me this, these fights are important to us, and we want to put on a good show. They really love boxing. Oscar Valdez is the only fighter that can go to a 6-week training camp in Guadalajara with a secluded building and says, God, that was a great time, and actually mean it. Like, he really thought it was a great bonding experience. Everyone else is tortured. True. He loves boxing. Going back to the original fight, Garcia Lipinets, I was very high on Lipinets. I've written stories about him. The thing that was alarming to me is when he blew out Clarence Booth and Lenny Z, he had the look of like, wow, this guy's really good. So I thought he was going to absolutely go right through the Japanese guy, and he didn't. He looked to me like a guy good enough to win a belt, but Mike, I go back to Mikey Garcia, and I disagree with a lot of his stances. I think he's one of the top 5 or 6 pure technicians in the sport. I just didn't see a guy that was going to be able to compete at that level. That's kind of like the way I look at it. Like, Lipinets is here. Garcia's probably a cut above.
Sure, I'm not saying they're on the same level. Kondo was a tough guy. He could take a punch. A lot of Japanese guys could.
True.
But with Mikey Garcia, I just think there's a reason not a lot of fighters are doing what he's doing currently. And that's, taking whatever fight at any weight. I just think it's going to catch up with him one day.
But
that's
I don't like the weight hopping. I think there's too much of it. There has to be a reason. If you're going to go up in weight, it has to be because you've cleaned out your division, or you can no longer make that weight, or there's somebody up at a higher weight class that's a big star or makes for a huge fight.
That ain't Lipinets.
Now, exactly. So Garcia could have fought Jorge Linares. That's a huge fight, a unification fight. He could have fought Robert Easter Jr. That's a unification fight. Not as big as an event as the Linares fight, but very significant for the lightweight.
And the money's about the same.
And the money was about the same. And so he says, well, I'm going to fight Lipinets because I'm chasing history.
What's that?
And I'm like, is it historic if no one cares?
Well, no. You know what he's chasing then? To be a better version of Ricky Burns and Adrian Broner. I mean, he's won multiple titles at 26, 30, and 35. Okay?
But that doesn't make you Roberto Duran.
Right.
That doesn't make you
my
Tommy
point.
Hearns.
No.
And it's who you fight.
At this point, Doug, when you see Mikey Garcia make certain statements, are you at that point like me now? You just roll your eyes and say,
I do, because I think he outsmarts himself. And I think he's so into being a boxing businessman, he's forgetting the sport, and he's kind of wasting his prime
But he's
years.
been honest about that, though. He is a businessman. He's a complete mercenary. He says, I do this as a job, which is fine.
But your 20s can go by just like that, And the thing is that he's thinking too much, and he has this attitude with promoters. So Golden Boy offers him like a 3-fight deal, and he's like, no, you're trying to lock me down. You want options. And I'm like, don't look at it like that. Take Golden Boy out of the equation and look what they're giving you. They're giving you Miguel Cotto, who you asked for on social media.
Then Linares.
You put that out there. You're talking about a battle-worn 36, 37-year-old who had already retired. He'd already said, this is my last fight. So you know he's not mentally dialed in. He's there for a taking, and he's a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Then you would fight Jorge Linares, who's, hey, listen, that's a difficult fight, difficult style, but we all know, Linares is getting old.
He's starting to fade in that fight.
Yeah, and Linares, he busts up, doesn't take a great shot. Mikey Garcia is an accurate power puncher. And then Lucas Matisse, another old guy. You fight those 3 guys. You beat all 3. You're like #1 pound for pound. You're like a Mexican-American superstar. And you're probably $6 million richer. Like, think of it like that.
There's an old saying about...
He's thinking about the business, though. No, golden boy, no. It's like, dude...
There's a saying about guys like Mikey Garcia. There's being smart, too smart, and 3 smart. Now I'm beginning to think you're Mikey smart. Literally, where would he be if he would have beat Cotto? Real quickly, since I believe most of us think Garcia is going to beat Lipinets, your prediction, Quigg Valdez.
Valdez, unanimous decision.
Doug?
I have no idea, man.
You really think that's 50-50?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Huh.
Absolutely. Quigg goes to the body, too. You know what? I'm gonna go with Valdez by close controversial decision.
I like that.
And I predict a lot of blood, too.
Yeah, I think Valdez is the more natural featherweight.
Yeah.
I think he's dialed in for this fight. I like Quigg. I admire his discipline, his dedication to the craft. I get the sense, though, Valdez might have a little bit too much firepower. All right, well, that's it for this edition of 10 Count. On behalf of Doug Fischer and Michael Baca, this is Steve Kim saying, till the next round, goodbye, everybody.